Why do you support Donald Trump?
I just support Donald Trump uh, based off of his economic prowess, the way that he has gone about um, his financial journey from the time that he was an adult to the time that he's become president. He has proved that he has the ability to manage the finances. And when he ran in 2016, the first go round, I got on the MAGA train then. And now, I mean, I still support, not everything. I support the way that he has handled the economy. I feel like there has been lots of things that have happened that are more political scams or political fronts as opposed to um, him just being able to get accomplished what he's trying to get accomplished. And so for me, it kind of more so fuels my support for him because the things that he's trying to get accomplished are often shut down or uh, um, opposed simply because he's a Republican. If to me, if you take the labels Republicans and Democrats off of a lot of things, then it becomes more um, simple-minded, the things that he's trying to accomplish for the country.
Okay. So I guess here would be my questions. Because I don't think he's done really good with his financial journey. I mean, he inherited $400 million from his dad, and he also has six bankruptcies. There's not a single good business person that I know that has six bankruptcies or that I've heard of that has six bankruptcies. That's a pretty unique set of circumstances for a financial journey. But could you point to any economic policy of his that you like?
Yeah, I love the tariff policy. I hate to get ripped off by other countries around the world. I also love the idea that federal government spends too much money, and he would like that states dedicate where the tax money goes more than federal government. I also like that he has the no federal income tax idea for lower income Americans being floated. The
So it's not.
tax cuts that he did. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. I guess here would be my question: how do tariffs reduce us from being ripped off by other countries?
Because, okay, if I produce a good and I want to sell it to my neighbor, and my neighbor wants to pay nothing for it, but when he tries to sell me something, I have to pay extra just because I'm his neighbor, doesn't it's not fair. We should all, if another country tariffs us, the reciprocal tariffs only make sense.
Can you tell me what a tariff is?
If indeed it was free trade, if it was indeed free trade across the world, then I would definitely be for that. But because other countries refuse to participate in that, then we shouldn't be the only country with the largest economy, import and export economy around the world. We shouldn't be the only ones that want the free trade. If everyone else is also going to tariff their goods, then why shouldn't we as well? We shouldn't be the only ones that have to suffer while everyone else profits off of America.
Okay. Can you tell me what a tariff is?
Yeah, a tariff is an over the border um, tax, basically. Over the board, an over the border extra profit margin for no reason.
Um, Interesting. Uh, who pays that tax?
The governments,
The government. What governments?
the federal governments or the country government who are receiving or exporting the goods.
Uh, that doesn't make no. Definitely not those that are exporting the goods. The importer, yeah, and it wouldn't be the country that pays it. It would be the American business. So, if America, the United States, places a tariff on a different country, that means that if a business from that country tries to sell their products in the United States, that the American importer will have to pay an extra tax on that, on top of that good, to the federal government, which if it's an aspect of cost of production and distribution and it's not on the profit side, that's going to mean that's going to increase the cost of the consumer product. So really what Trump is doing is he's shifting the taxation from those that are higher in terms of their income to those that are lower in terms of income. Because when you replace income tax with tariffs, it replaces a progressive tax with a regressive tax. Tariffs are regressive. People who are lower income disproportionately spend their income on consumer goods, right? Whereas specifically in terms of a progressive tax through the context of income, as you make more money, there are brackets in which you pay more in taxes per percentage for each different income bracket you hit.
Correct, but the higher you go up, the it shouldn't be. It should all everything should be proportional. It shouldn't be 33% here and 23% here and 12% there. To me, across the board is equal. Even if you're making more, you shouldn't have less responsibility than if you have more responsibility than if you have
To clarify,
less.
did you say 23% is equal to 12%?
No,
Maybe I'm misunderstanding you there. What were you saying was equal?
you're saying to me that it is a regressive tax for a tariff, and it's a progressive tax if it's income tax, because the richer end up, I mean, the poorer end up paying for the tariff rather than the tax, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Tariffs are regressive, and income tax is progressive, so it's shifting the burden of taxation.
Okay, so the only way that I'm paying the tariff is because the tariff is coming out in consumer price, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I am making more money, I'm still paying the same tariff tax as the person that is making less money, correct? I'm still paying the same price for the goods that came from the increase from the tariff. But if the person who makes less money is having to not pay income tax, but they're paying more for tariff, then it's balancing out
No, it's
because you're
not.
not paying the income tax.
No, because they'd spend a greater proportion of their income on consumer goods than people who are richer. So, in order to be able to make up the same revenue from a governmental perspective, you would have to tax people who are lower income to a greater extent through the context of tariffs to be able to produce the same level of revenue as what you get through the context of a progressive tax where you tax disproportionately those that are rich. So a tariff,
Okay,
the reason why it harms people to a greater extent who are lower income is because again, they spend a greater proportion of their income on consumer goods.
okay. So the tariffs that were already on us before, right? We already were being tariffed by other countries, right? How does it change if we start tariffing other countries? That's not going to affect my pocket, right?
Yes, it
If
is.
it's going to
Yeah,
affect
if
the
we
other
tariff,
country, it's going to affect
no,
the other country's pockets, not my pockets.
no, it will affect both of our pockets. It absolutely will affect your pockets. That's the basis of a tariff. In order for a tariff to be able to increase domestic production, it has to be able to incentivize through the context of its tax mechanisms people to buy consumer goods in the United States that were made in the United States rather than buying consumer goods that were made in countries around the world. How do you do that? Well, the tariff does that by increasing the cost to the American consumer, right, for the goods that come from countries around the world. So in order for there to be an increase in domestic production, such as the one that Trump was claiming that we're going to bring back manufacturing to the country, there would have to be an increase in the price of consumer goods for the American consumer. So yes, your prices will go up because they haven't gone up to like the same level of inflation that we saw under the Biden-Harris administration. Doesn't mean that it isn't harming your pockets, because we would have seen lower inflation now if we had the Biden-Harris administration in office comparative to the Trump administration.
Yeah, but the problem is, you see, okay, so if we were not tariffing anyone, let's just say everything was a blank slate, we're not tariffing anyone, everybody is tariffing us, right? Then when we sell goods, they're paying more. I mean, we're paying more for their goods than they're paying for our goods.
Not true. They're paying more for our goods than we are for their goods because we don't have a tariff on them and they have a tariff on us. So a tariff is a tax on goods that are brought into the country from other countries. Who pays that tax? The American company, because our government wouldn't be able to obligate, companies from other countries to pay a certain tax. They don't exist in the United States. It'd be really hard to enforce that. That doesn't make any sense to enforce it from that perspective. The reason why it would affect the other country is because those companies will now get less business in our country, because it is the case that their goods to the American consumers within our country will be more expensive to the American consumer because there will be an extra imposed tax by the government, right, on that good according to the importer, the American importer, that then gets passed down to the consumer because it's an aspect of cost of production and distribution. Say it's income tax and you have you take the money out of your business, you're taxed on the profits you take out. Whereas like a tariff, it's a tax specifically on the cost of production and distribution, which puts greater upward pressure on the prices.
Around the world, there are multiple countries who rely on things that they receive from America to even function, to have an economy. We supply everything for them. Let's say if I go to the store and there's Frito, yes there is. Yes, there's countries around the world that rely on American goods to exist, to
Which
keep their
country?
economy thriving. I don't have the information pulled up right away where I can just give it to you.
Is there any
But
country you could name off the top of your head?
I can do a quick search and give you countries,
Oh, if you'd like to, you can. Yeah.
but it's gonna close my app whenever I switch over. So don't
Yeah,
boot
well,
me
I
from
just want to
the.
let you know the U.S. is it's not really like a supplier for the rest of the world. The U.S. is a consumer base, a really big consumer base, or on our overall market. Now, are there countries around the world that rely on us? Yes, but it's mainly because of the fact that we demand their goods, not because we're producing their goods. That's actually what Trump is saying. That's why he's like, oh, we need to bring back manufacturing to the country. But I mean, really the only person who brought back manufacturing was the Biden-Harris administration, because it is the case that we saw a huge increase in real manufacturing investment under the Biden-Harris administration due to their policies, like the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the Chips and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. Whereas under the Trump administration, we've seen declines in real manufacturing investment. And I would say that's likely due to the fact that there's not much certainty in investment in domestic manufacturing in the United States. One, because the manufacturing process has become more expensive because goods from all across the country, all across the world, have become more expensive. Because if we tariff those goods and they're an aspect of our manufacturing process in the United States, well, then the cost of production for manufacturing goes up in the United States. So we've seen an increase in the cost of production for manufacturing firms in the United States. We've seen less certainty within the markets because we don't know if the tariffs are going to be long run, because one, they might be illegal, and two, the next president can just get rid of them. So we haven't really seen an uptick in manufacturing investment from any of these policies. So it seems like it's really not giving us a benefit, while also simultaneously we're having all these negatives. The U.S. jobs reports have been so bad that Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because he said it was politically biased information. And then he hired a new person, and they indicated the very same trend of 22,000 new jobs for this next month, which is crazy. So that's not only
Okay.
it. There has also been an increase in
So you
unemployment,
saying
a decrease in real GDP growth, and an increase in inflation since April, which is when he did Liberation Day.
you're saying that you haven't seen an uptick in manufacturing investments in United States?
Yeah, since Trump got in office. Yeah, it's gone down, actually.
No, that's not true. Here in Louisiana, where I live, we just got approved for a $4.6 billion investment for a giga plant in North Louisiana. But before that wasn't something that's gonna be here. And at this giga plant, there's not just gonna be there's also an investment in Louisiana for a aluminum factory. So that's manufacturing directly. So how is there not an investment in the United States in manufacturing right now?
Oh, I never said there's no investment. I just said that there's declining levels of investment. So you actually see here, this is when Biden left office here in quarter four 2024. Since then, we've seen a decline quarter after quarter. And then under the first administration, this is when he got in office, and this is when he left office. So it was lower than when he got in office. So,
Well, nobody
the
was manufacturing anything during COVID. So, I mean, of course, those
well,
numbers will be low.
well, it was even downward trend for his first 2 years as well. We saw a small uptick from quarter four 2018 to 2019, but then continued on the trend of decline. So it's really obvious that this is real manufacturing investment, by the way, too. So it's taking into account inflation. So yeah, we've actually seen a decline under Trump's administration in his first term and in his second term so far. And you see under the Biden-Harris administration, here Biden gets in office right here, and then they pass their policy like right here, and boom. And like
I see a little
go ahead.
chart. I see it. I'm just looking at your chart there. That's good info.
Yeah, this is from the St. Louis Federal Reserve, and they get it from the Bureau of Economic Analysis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, here in Louisiana, I've noticed an uptick in manufacturing and investments into manufacturing, especially according to local press and things coming from our Louisiana government here. So it makes sense to me that manufacturing is on an increase, not a decrease, based on what we're given here.
Maybe in Louisiana due to the Biden infrastructure packages, but I doubt that's because of Trump's administration's policy at all, or it was specifically because Trump got in office. And I don't think that, would be representative of the rest of the nation. I mean, Louisiana is just a small portion of the U.S.'s entire population. So even if it was true that it was increasing in Louisiana due to Trump's policies, the 49 other states have not seen that same trend.
Right. I understand what you're saying. Um, the the reason that I requested to join was because the conversation you were having with the last person. You mentioned a case specific about XX and having a male member in that, and the reason I wanted to jump in was to say that your that example that you gave was very case specific.
Of course.
It doesn't that doesn't that doesn't apply to mass of people. Like you
I mean,
can't say that.
intersex people. There are a lot of intersex people. I just want to let you know that. So it does apply to many
No,
people who are intersex, but intersex people don't make up a huge portion of the population. Similarly, people with hazel eyes, people with hazel.
what percent
Also,
of
let me.
people
Can I
would
give
you
you this point
say
as well? Oh, this is an
qualify as
incredibly
intersex?
important point. Hazel eyes are not very prevalent either. I have hazel eyes, right? Hazel eyes are about 3% of the population, not very high percent of the population. So just because something is a small percentage of the population doesn't mean it wouldn't be like relevant to talk about.
Yes, to me, if you are trying to say that 1, 2, or 3% of the population should apply and the rules for those 2, 3% be looked at as a spectrum, or I mean as a wide range to apply to society, is not accurate to me. If 97% of people are born with XY and have this member, shouldn't that be the standard, like the automatic thought?
Repeat what you just said. Sorry, I must be misunderstanding what you're saying. Go ahead.
Okay. If there's 97% of people are born with the correct member and chromosomes that match, the correct
What?
physical.
No, no. I don't think. Okay, when you say correct, I think that's also like saying that like people who are intersex are like somehow incorrect. I don't think that's the good way to refer to it. I think that's actually like pretty bad. But like you would say the norm. The norm is the case that
The
when
natural,
people have a
the
male
natural.
member, that it is the case that they have XY chromosomes. But that's not always true. It's also not the norm for people to have hazel eyes. So like the idea that like we would judge what's quote unquote correct based upon the norms is kind of ridiculous. Like think about how unlikely as a person I am.
What
Think
else
about it.
makes
Me,
what else makes it
I'm
correct?
5'11", 6 foot. I have hazel eyes, right? Just putting those two characteristics together, very small percentage of the population has hazel eyes and is about 5'11" plus. Okay, very small percent of the population. Okay, so just because it is the case that that's a small percentage of the population, right, doesn't mean that I'm not going to be like referenced in terms of like a norm. People wouldn't refer to those that are like 6 foot tall, 5'11" as like, like, or in that have hazel eyes as like, not correct or something. That would seem absurd to say, right?
No, I'm not saying that it's not correct. What I'm saying is that if the majority of your test subjects have this rule applied to them, then that is what you would consider the norm, the average, the fact. There are outliers do happen in statistics.
Yeah, okay. So the example that I was bringing up was just essentially
So
just to see how he bases the idea of gender identity. And I was going to show him that there are some social elements to gender identity, that it's not solely biological. That's essentially all I was arguing. And I can just demonstrate this one quick way. Are you Christian?
yeah, oh yeah, I'm
Okay, so
definitely
so this is the way that I typically do it to people who are Christian. God the Father is a man, right? We use he, him pronouns to refer to him, yet he has no biology. Prior to incarnation, no biology. Doesn't have a male member, doesn't have XY chromosomes, doesn't have small
mhm.
gametes. He has none of the biological sex characteristics, but we can still use gendered pronouns and gender identity to refer to God, meaning that some
Right,
aspect of gender is going to be sociological in nature. Not all of it is going to be biological. That's all we're saying.
right. No, and like
I can't hear you currently. You must have cut out.
I said, it might come off as I'm against transsexuals or intersex people or any of that,
Trans
and
people.
that's not what I'm saying. Trans people, okay? What I'm saying is it's not um it's not logical, it's not feasible to take the smaller sample and apply it to the larger like the larger population. If if the 3% becomes more important than the 97%, or not more important but more focused in on than the 97%, then the 97% is is what, like, you can't leave out the you can't leave out the majority.
No one's leaving out the majority when we were having that conversation.
Because it like, what I'm saying is the 97% the should be looked at as what you would say is the norm. The 3% are the outliers.
Okay, so then I shouldn't be
The,
looked at
the
as the.
rules,
Okay, so then in the same way
the
that you don't,
rules,
in the same way that you
the
think that like,
rules should be made. Shouldn't the rules being made for the 97%, not
rule
just the 3%?
rules are made for everyone. Okay. We have to, take into account situations that are unlikely. What percent of people do you think are affected by crime in this country? It's not going to be everyone. It's going to be a small percent of people.